Colleen.
Here.
Chair Scott,
Present.
you have a quorum present.
Thank you. Next item, please.
B, Chairwoman's remarks.
Oh, just want to say to my colleagues that are here and those that are not, we thank God that we are all going to be back here. So congratulations, everyone, including me. I'm grateful.
You had a job.
I'm grateful. I'm through. Next item, please.
C, approval of the July 23rd, 2024 meeting minutes.
Motion. Support. Who made the motion?
We have a motion by Commissioner
Oh,
Marecki
okay.
and support by Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you. All in favor?
Please vote on your tablets.
Aye.
Okay.
We're doing
Oh, it's on our tablets. Okay.
Motion carried.
All right. Thank you. Okay, next item, please.
D, unfinished business. There is none listed.
Next item.
Moving to item 1, under new business, requesting commission approval of Amendment 3 to a grant agreement with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services for the fiscal year 2024 project allocations for emerging threats, local health department for a new project, measles readiness and response to support efforts to promote measles vaccination.
Okay. Thank you so much. Give us your name, please.
Good afternoon. Sammy Shalabi, Deputy Division Director. Just touch it.
Well,
All right, we'll try that again. Sammy
That's better.
Shalaby,
Thank
Deputy
you.
Division Director, Clinical Care Services.
Thank you.
So we're requesting approval for an amendment, $25,000 to be used within this fiscal year to work around media messaging around the measles response. And this will be through a media communication campaign.
Any questions? Commissioner Anderson?
yeah.
That brain back there. Hang on. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask, are we expecting a large outbreak this year, or is this just a precaution to have the money available?
So this was put into motion before the outbreak, I believe, and don't quote me, I believe at the year we're at 7 confirmed cases, and we had the one from last week, which we released a press release about. In response to that, we've had 20 case managers working to track it and diffuse it. We're working hand in hand with the state. And so, you know, this was always something that we wanted to do, and it reaffirms it based on the previous outbreak that this messaging is something that's required.
Is the messaging going to be strictly about the process, identifying it, and what to do to protect your kids, or is there going to be political people in the commercial?
I don't believe it's political. I believe it's going to be around the importance of vaccinations. As many people know, with the measles vaccinations, you get 2 of them, one at 1 year old, one between 4 and 6 years old. And that's good for life. And that's a 97% efficacy rate. So we just want people to go out there and get measles vaccine because it works really well. And that's what we can do to support each other.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Who should get the measles vaccine?
Everybody.
Everybody,
And don't take my word, I'm not an MD, but from what I know, everybody should get the measles vaccine.
no matter what age.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you didn't, most people get it again when they're young. And if you don't get it when you're young, you can get it when you're older.
Absolutely.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I got it.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. No. I just remembered there was another thing that I've been hearing commercials or in news reports about COVID-19 again. The numbers are bumping up again. Do you know if there's going to be a vaccination push for that this year?
So I'm not fully sure what the push is. I know that we do offer the vaccines at our public health clinics, but I can, you know, gather that intel and bring it back to the committee.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Marecki?
Thank you. Are the 7 cases, are they in Wayne County, or are you talking about the statewide?
7 in the state, the second was in Wayne County.
Second
Yeah,
one, okay, was in Wayne County.
that was the one from last week.
Okay, oh, I didn't see that. All right.
And we're in Wayne County.
I know that there was a press release and
I
the
can-
article discussed. Oh, Dr. Sheth, are you trying to speak?
Yeah, hi, everyone. Sorry I couldn't join in person. Just to respond to that, we're not, allowed to kind of release like exactly where, but it is in Wayne County. a case in Wayne County, and it was in an adult that recently returned from international travel. And so this is the 7th case in the state of Michigan to date in 2024. This case is unrelated to any of the other cases, but as you have heard, measles cases are increasing across the country and across the world. And this is all in the context of decreased childhood vaccination rates. And so we're going to be prioritizing this funding to promote getting everyone up to date.
I'm sorry, did you say it was an adult?
It was.
Yes.
Mhm,
Oh,
mhm.
Thank you. Commissioner Kleen.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm going to guess Dr. Sheth would agree with me. It almost doesn't matter where it happened in the county, given the nature of what measles is. It spreads so rapidly,
Mhm.
and you can be in contact with anybody that can carry. But I was going to ask, and I don't know if you know, or if Dr. Sheth, you know, what's the current vaccination rate for measles among people in Michigan?
So there's a couple of different ways to look at it. In the state level, so it has been trending downward. We know over the last several years, throughout the pandemic years, and continuing to trend downward. And in terms of vaccine coverage, they quote that since 2020, the 84.7% to 83.6%. So there has been a kind of a steady decline in these rates. Commissioner Killeen, you brought up a good point. Measles is highly, highly contagious. That's why the response is so intense, because one case can cause many cases in those that are not protected and not vaccinated. Basically around 4 out of every 5 who do not have protection and not vaccinated go on to develop measles. And so this is something that we like to respond to immediately and contain. And so with these decreases, even if they're small in vaccination coverage, there is a significant increase of risk of an outbreak just because of how measles operates.
And thank you. And I'm sure that trend is also nationwide, and
Mhm.
if not to our neighbors to the north either, where there's regular people going back and forth across the border with Canada. It's just, I'll just make this comment, Madam Chair. Losing faith in the public health system is something that we are seeing in our society, and have seen that trend has been going for a while and brought into sharp focus with COVID. And so it's just a shame people don't respond to things like vaccinations as they once did. But I'll leave that. But
Yeah.
thank you, Madam Chair.
That's true. Any others? All right. Okay, thank you. I have a motion, please. Oh.
And that's a motion to approve it, Madam.
Okay, okay, and supported, Commissioner Killeen, supported by Commissioner Anderson. All in favor? Any opposes? Hearing none, motion carried. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Item 2, discussion on the Wayne County Regional Educational Service Agency.
Well, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here. Want to each
Absolutely.
give your name, please?
Yes. So good afternoon. Tucson Knight, Division Director for Prevention and Diversion in JYS.
Colbert, Dr. Colbert, Superintendent, Wayne Regional Educational Service Agency, Wayne RESA. Thank you for having us back.
Yes, thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, Beth Gonzalez, Deputy Superintendent for Educational Services for Wayne RESA.
Thank you.
Awesome. So they're here for a discussion, and they also have a presentation that they would like to show you all. Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to open up and just say again, we want to thank the Wayne County Commissioners as well as the executive for the opportunity for the funding for Wayne County schools that will greatly impact students across the entire county. Out of 43 communities, that means 33 school districts, 33 local education agencies, and 97 public school academies, representing 260,000 students. So with us, we also have our Deputy Superintendent Kelly Bowe, who is over operations, human resources, finances, roles up. We did not bring Drew McMeekin, our financial person, because we knew that we could handle whatever the questions were today. But we're again just glad to present these few slides and talk about the opportunity that the funding presented. The areas in which we were able to apply this funding were mental health and supports for our students and families, as well as literacy and mathematics. Deputy Superintendent Beth Gonzalez will go through the slides and present key data, and then we will answer any questions that you have. Again, thank you for the opportunity. I'll go ahead and share with and allow Beth to take it from here.
Thank you, Dr. Colbert. Thank you.
Now, we just want to be clear. Will they click the slides for us or do they? Oh, they'll click. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for welcoming us here today. We're going to share an update with you on the status of our implementation of the 3 funded proposals after essentially almost 1 full year of implementation as we enter the 2nd year. As we enter the month of September, we have about 12 additional months to implement these initiatives. And today we'll share with you some highlights of where we are. So as Dr. Colbert lifted, one of those funded proposals is to support students' access to diverse text. Another is to support equitable outcomes in mathematics. And finally, our focus on mental health supports for students. And I'll talk in detail about each of these proposals. Next slide, please. So many of you are likely familiar with this because you were involved in the initial approvals, but it's been some time. So just as a refresher, as you know, when we think about literacy achievement for youth, young people in our school districts, a huge indicator of how successful they are is just how much they read, often referred to as volume of reading. And how much they read is often motivated by their interest in texts. And so we know students need access to culturally relevant, rich texts that help them see themselves in text and expose them to other parts of our communities and our world that they might not have access to day to day. And so we partnered with an organization called Newsela, and they provide highly relevant, culturally high interest, culturally relevant text to students. They're mostly articles, ranging from things that are just high interest to kids, things they like to do in their free time, as well as, things that are going on socially or politically. They focus on content areas in ELA, social studies, science, and social emotional learning. And they have text for students in grades 2 through 12. And so we brought, if you'll go to the next slide, please, we brought that resource to 53 of our districts and public school academies, representing over 26,000 students in Wayne County. We fully launched this resource in districts. It's a digital resource in December. So the first several months in the grant, we're working with district administrators, working on the integrations that are required because it's a technological resource, and then working with teachers to launch it to their students. And so what we saw for the 2nd semester of the school year is a little over 3,000 students really actively engaged in using the tool, and nearly 300 teachers actively leveraging the resource with their teachers. And you can see in that time, we had over 125,000 articles read. And then as part of the implementation, students have access to, quizzes based on their reading, something called power words. That's where a student decides to engage and they say, this is an unknown word in the text. I want to know more about that word. And so again, they're expanding their knowledge of vocabulary. You can see over 12,000 engagement from those engaged students. If you go to the next slide. So what we understand is we did do a December launch. And so as we roll into the next school year, we're really excited for our adopted districts and teachers to really engage from the beginning of the school year. And so we're doing back to school workshops with all of the educators in the adopted districts. And we'll continue in the year ahead to do some deep professional learning focused on those 4 themes that our teachers have identified they need in terms of supporting and leveraging the resource. We're also partnering with Newsela to do research and efficacy studies on a subset of high fidelity, high implementing districts. And then finally, we'll be looking at the overall student performance based on, for in grades 3 through 11 in particular. The statewide assessment, MSTEP, is administered each spring, and we'll be looking at our implementing districts' performance and if there's improvements in reading proficiency and student achievement outcomes. That data is embargoed at this time. It has not been publicly released. And so that's not something we're able to speak to from our 1 semester implementation. But in the fall, typically around October, November, that's something we'd be able to speak to for year 1. And certainly next October, November, after 1 full year of implementation, we'll be able to study the impact that the resource had on students' performance in literacy. I'll speak to the next proposal unless there are any questions about the
Are there any?
first.
Commissioner Marecki?
Thank you. So I'm going back to slide 5, which is the impact to date. You know, I remember when my kids were growing up, like you had mentioned, they said, no matter if the kids like what they're reading, they're going to read. But there was never any testing done if they even were comprehending what they were going to read. And I don't see, and I get it, you're going to get more information in September, but things like quizzes completed. Okay, that's great, but what are the results of the quizzes that are completed? And I guess, I mean, Michigan, and this is not Teresa, but Michigan just keeps falling further and further behind the reading. And I know 2019 was not bad. Some school districts were closed. I think Lansing was closed for 2 years. Detroit was closed for 2 years. So I get that. In Detroit, actually had the state overall has bad national numbers, but Detroit even got affected more, probably by another 10%. So I'm just wondering, this is all great, and I'm not criticizing, but what kind of, do you just have to wait for the year and see what happens?
Yeah, thank you for your question. I'll respond first, and then I'm sure Dr. Colbert wants to share some things. The quizzes that are built into this tool are formative in nature to inform teachers' instruction. They're not summative to indicate, you know, how well a child reads overall. And I will also add that this initiative and this set of funds is one part of a comprehensive plan that we support our districts in supporting students in reading, including high dosage small group tutoring, including small group instruction, including core instructional materials, right? This is not their daily literacy instruction, the core 1 hour. This is a supplement in addition to, and we know it takes a lot of differentiated supports for any student to reach proficiency in reading. And many students have different factors that impact, right? And so one of the ways that we overall assess the progress is with that summative statewide data, right? That tells you about the system. You know, are these different strategies having a positive impact? Are more students proficient today than were previously, both grade level, you know, comparing grade level to grade level, and then looking at cohorts of students. So we, in our overall work and in partnership with our districts, we're constantly monitoring that data. And we have other, you know, grants and strategies to support them with supporting individual students. Dr. Colbert, what would you like to add?
Well, no, I was going to say, Justin, I think you've definitely covered it, that in 6 months, the data won't show a huge increase in performance. Any strategy takes at a minimum 3 to 5 years to really show gains of increasing outcomes that are sustainable. not a bump because you've now implemented a new strategy and it's been implemented with Fidelity. So then there's a little bump. That bump is not sustainable unless that continues to be implemented with Fidelity for a 3 to 5 year window of routine, repetitive practice that then becomes a sustainable outcome. So there's nothing that, and if you ever see it, that's why you see our data in Michigan do this, because we'll have something for a year, they will fund it, and then unfortunately can't fund it for year 2 or year 3. You're supposed to be able to try to fund it yourself. Districts didn't have that in the onset to do it. So they actually had the bump for a year. You saw a little sprinkle of an increase, but then you saw a decline the following year because they weren't able to sustain the practice. And again, it has to be repetitive, 3 to 5, for it to be a sustainable outcome. So that's with any math and or science implementation. So this is, again, just a piece of the puzzle, but yet a good piece for that should be a part of a foundation. And so we need to have the system continue to work itself from the hit that took place in 2020, 2021, as you said, because 2020 and 2021, unfortunately, students were learning differently. They were not, but prior to, you saw some improvement in the system, but then you saw the fallout with not being in school and not having the resources implemented with Fidelity over the next several years.
Okay, just 2 more questions,
Sure,
if I
go
may.
ahead.
And this is just a side note, just for my own interest. Are school districts teaching phonics anymore? Or is it, they just keep going back and forth? One day it's phonics, the next day it's like you can read what you want. That's my first question. And if it's taking like 5 years to be sustainable, do you have enough money to keep this program going for the next 5 or 6 or 10 years?
And we will talk about that. Go ahead, Beth, with the phonics.
To your first question, we have spent a great deal of time with our districts, actually 2 years of literacy symposiums, really digging into the literacy research on best practice, and thinking with our districts about their comprehensive plan for literacy and the full literacy block. You know, do students in the early grades have access to systemic reading foundational skills, daily instruction? Do they also have rich read alouds? You know, are they using small texts in early grades to decode words? And then what does that look like through the grades? And that's been a focus of ours. And actually a second project, which is obviously is not funded by this office, but we have used other grant funds to support, excuse me, is to work with them to adopt, if they did not have a reading foundational skills program, to identify, adopt, and implement one. So some of those districts were piloting and moving to full implementation this year. Others have been implementing, but that has been a focus of our work overall.
When you say the reading, that phonics?
Yeah.
Is that
Embedded within, absolutely.
Yeah, reading foundational skills is phonics instruction. It goes a little bit beyond that. Funding. You know, that's something I plan to address at the end of our discussion of all 3 proposals.
Okay, you can.
But the funding this particular set of funding goes through September, end of September 2025. So we have 1 more year. But beyond that, for each of these proposals, there are no funding sources that at this time that we're aware of that would be able to continue to fund the proposals. And so that's something that'll be part of advocacy. They are having an impact. They're being well received. We think they're important. Yeah.
No, you said it.
I'm sorry.
Hey, you need some.
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Phonics was very important. Okay, anyone else?
Let's go to the second. Okay.
Great.
Okay,
Okay,
okay.
mathematics.
All right. Supporting equitable outcomes in mathematics. So actually for 5 years now, through statewide funding, we've had the opportunity to support a coach on special assignment strategy for literacy, but we've never had state funds for mathematics. And so your funding allowed us to introduce a math on special assignment implementation, which our superintendents identified. You know, this was the #1 thing they said. If we could wave a magic wand, if we had additional funding, this is what we would want. Our coaches working in our buildings alongside educators to support implementation of the early math instructional practices to move student achievement outcomes in mathematics. So if you'll go to the next slide. Thank you, Dr. Culver. So in the first year of funding, 21 local districts partnered with us and hired 24 mathematics coaches. We deeply invested in the first year in these coaches and understanding both from andragogy, how do coaches work with other adults to support them in the classroom as coaches, and then also building their knowledge of the mathematics instructional practices. In support of this portion of the presentation, I provided you 2 handouts, and one of those is the Michigan instructional practices for mathematics. Not to read now, but might be interesting for you later, but this is the foundation for which our coaches are working to help teachers implement in their classrooms to improve outcomes for students. We, as part of our COSA implementation, we study and we do a key findings report each year. And what we found was coaches spent over half of their time working directly elbow to elbow with teachers and classrooms and students on mathematics instruction. We anticipate in year 2 of this implementation that time will increase. But of course, in the first year, they're both learning how to coach, engaging in professional learning themselves, and also supporting their principals in school-wide academic instructional practices initiatives. Some of them are engaging in small group instruction with students. Some of them are engaging directly with parents or organizing family nights, but overall supporting mathematics instruction for the school. And principals really reported positive impact in terms of a focus on mathematics instruction through the support of these coaches. It's been really incredible. And actually, we had the opportunity to invite Mr. Knight to our year-end wrap-up with the coaches to engage directly with them and hear from them about the impact they're having, how they feel in their role after the first year. It was a good meeting. Did you want to add anything about that, Mr. Knight?
I was very impressed on how many staff was just very excited about the program and the amount of kids they were touching.
I provided you, this has not been fully published. It's part of a full report, but this is just a 1-pager that shows a little bit deeper information about our key findings from our coaches and their first year. Of course, as Dr. Colbert lifted, in terms of impact, after 1 year of coaching, we see probably overall an improvement in each of the buildings in the focus of mathematics and mathematics instruction. But we likely will not see the impact in student achievement outcomes for 3 to 5 years after support of these coaches, because it takes both strong coaching, it takes professional learning for coaches and educators, and it takes strong instructional materials to really realize excellence in mathematics classrooms. One thing that I would celebrate is that this initiative has provided a strong foundation for other opportunities. So recently, Wayne Risa had the opportunity to apply for a grant through the Michigan Department of Education that was appropriated by the state. And 19 of the districts that are part of this initiative said, we need highly aligned instructional materials in mathematics. We need better stuff for our teachers to teach with, because as our teachers become more familiar with the instructional practices and they think about what they want for students, they're going, gosh, I just don't have what I need to do this. And so we did just receive a $1.7 million grant to support the 19 districts through an adoption process, which will provide pilot materials, and then they'll dedicate district funds to do a full adoption of new materials in the year ahead. And actually, it takes coaches working alongside teachers to make meaning of new materials. And so again, this is just a foundation for other work that we're going to be able to do in the year ahead that we're really excited about. If you go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about where we're headed. So we are actually able to increase the total number of coaches this next year. Some of our districts, despite, the gratitude for the funding, were not yet organized by the time it was approved to hire and select a coach in their district last year. But a number of districts organized themselves over the last year, and they've hired those coaches to begin for the 24-25 school year. The funding that we received really was actually for 1 year, but the way we were able to maximize the use of the funds, and honestly, we reduced the cost in terms of what Wayne Risa was going to use for our own consultants and professional learning. We actually replace some of your investment with other grant funds we had access to maximize the number for personnel. And so this year for our implementing districts, we were able to give them 50% of the cost of the coach for a second year. And all of them agreed that it was so important that they were able to match those funds and provide the other half of the investment. So this ends up being a 2-year coaching program instead of 1-year coaching program. But I will share there, we don't have a funding source for the following year. And we actually think that this is having the greatest impact to date of the 3 implementations. We'll continue to provide professional learning and coaching supports for both the coaches and educators in Wayne County. And again, we're leading this adoption work in the year ahead, and we're just feeling really optimistic about where this work is headed. Do you guys have any questions about the math? Okay, final presentation. So as you know, particularly after what students experienced being home for so long during COVID, and also just the current state of our society, the increase in access to technology, it's just having an impact on students' mental health. And we knew that because the state appropriated what are called 31N6 dollars to provide additional social work and mental health professionals in schools. And many of our districts applied for those funds, but we didn't have enough funds to fund all of the districts that asked for the resource. And so this proposal allowed us, if you go to the next slide, please, to fund the additional districts. There were 12 additional districts that had applied for funding. And so we were able to fund their proposals. It provides support to general education students for mild to moderate mental health needs, meaning they have a social worker, they have a school psychologist, they have resources when students are grappling with things like suicide ideation, or sadness or depression or disengagement or lack of attendance. And so as of the end of last year, we had an additional 14 mental health providers in these districts doing that work with students. And so those students would not be receiving those supports without the work of this proposal. And we're very, very grateful, as are the districts. As we move into this school year, again, there'll be actually more than 14 mental health professionals because, again, by the time they received the funds, they weren't necessarily able to hire for and fill all the positions that they had funded. But given the nature of the funding and the ability to spend by the end of September an additional year, they're going to maximize the use of those funds this year. Additionally, we had funding to do a pilot implementation in partnership with an organization called Care Solace. And so we have 13 districts that are participating in that implementation. And what that means is when, let's say, a student goes to a guidance counselor and shares, that they're struggling with their own mental health, or maybe a family comes to the school or guidance counselor and talks about needs they have. This resource allows them to connect them to external partners and support to get that help for that child. And so it maximizes the overall system. A lot of our districts were implementing some, not a lot, but some of our districts had dedicated other dollars to implement this, and we're having a lot of success. Other districts were very interested in adding it, but they didn't have the funds to do so. So this allowed some of those to jump on board. During the time with which we've implemented so far, over 946 cases essentially have been enacted, meaning, those represent a child, a family, an adult who needs help. There have been over 47,000 communications. That means outreach coordinators, that means mental health professionals, that means support systems working with families to get students the help they need. And also, I keep saying students, but also their service provides help to the overall family. So if a child comes to an educator and says, my mom or dad is saying they want to kill themselves, this is a set of services that will connect them, regardless of the resources of the family, to get the help they need, because that's actually what's needed for the child to be able to be well and engage and attend school. So total appointments to care, 417 to date. A really big feature of this implementation that I think is powerful is the anonymous searches. So a family can call, say they're a resident of the district, and they do not have to provide identifying information to get help. We take in good faith that they are a member of the school community because they know about the resource, and they get the help they need. This is having a really positive impact, and you can see it's sort of hard to see on this, but you guys have access to the presentation. You can see the identified mental health needs here from the outreaches, and they range anything from anxiety, depression, trauma, marital issues, suicide ideation, eating disorders, just things that are impacting students from having success and attending school. And we think this has been really important. Our partnership with CareSolace has been really strong, and we're excited to move into year 2 of this resource. Teachers are becoming more and more familiar with its success, and having the confidence to share it with families when they see an issue. Next slide. Kind of already said this. We'll do a full end of year report for the 31N6 implementation, because that's actually what's required for our other set of funds from the Michigan Department of Education appropriated by the state legislature. So we can tell you a little bit more about that when those reports are due, because we implemented an alignment with that set of criteria. And then in terms of CareSolace, I meet with them monthly. We look at the data about who is being served. We talk about which districts are taking advantage and it's being actively used. We talk about schools or districts where, it's not being used much, and asking the questions about, are people aware, and implementing campaigns to increase awareness. And you can see a little bit here about, who of all those cases I presented, who is being served in terms of children, adolescents, adults, gender, and ethnicity. That's everything from us.
Asking if you have any additional questions.
Okay. Commissioner Killeen?
Thank you, Sharon. Okay. Well, first I want to comment that I watch with great, I don't know what you'd call it, the declining interest in America for public education and the commitment to that. It's just, to a large extent, it's what built the country, and now we're walking away from it. 2 words that I heard a lot in your presentation, fund and funding. Can you briefly, first of all, what kind of budget are you operating on? And just briefly, what are your major sources of funding?
So our funding is all grant funded and or legislated. It's appropriated. So when we
Yeah,
talk
from
about,
state of Michigan, yeah.
correct. So when we talk about 31N, that's in the School Aid Act. And then we also apply for anything that the Michigan Department of Education has that definitely supports our schools. So that means we apply for everything that we can apply for to support Wayne County schools, knowing that it is the most diverse, the most unique, has the most challenges, also has the most successes when you really look at where we've come from to where we're going. So any and all funding that Wayne RESA, meaning an ISD, can apply for, we apply for it. We also have the regional enhancement millage, as you know, which will be on the ballot November the 5th. We, in fact, collect those dollars, but all of those dollars are in fact distributed to our LEAs and PSAs. So $0 stay at Wayne. Okay, to all of our school districts and all of our public school academies.
So you just pass it through.
Absolutely, that's it. So every dollar, any grant that supports our constituents that we can apply for, we apply for. Grants that we cannot apply for directly, we make sure that they have the information, and then we help each district and or public school academy to apply for those dollars. So we were definitely excited, as we said, about how the mental health dollars that came from the county were able to offset where we had distributed every dollar that we had received in school aid budget 31 and 6, but it did not cover the entire county. That meant some districts were unable to receive the funding until you all helped with the additional
So
funding.
what kind of total budget are you working on?
The Wayne
Right.
Risa budget is 600 million,
For
everything.
200 and some
60,000,
thousand
correct.
students, yeah.
But now remember, that's Act 18, that's special education, IDEA, that's
Right,
the enhancement millage dollars, that's the school, that's
Everything.
everything.
yeah, I got you. I have so many questions on this, because then I look at these numbers and your ability to reach, like, you talked about 28,000 students as part of the, is that part of the math?
Literacy, I believe.
Literacy, yeah.
Literacy.
And that's just 1/10 of the,
Correct,
and so, again, it's a funding issue. It's a
Correct.
commitment. Were you, the budget that was just passed in Lansing,
yes.
are you part of that school budget as an intermediate school district, where they lay out the per pupil funding and all that sort of
So
thing?
we do not get a per pupil because we do not have.
No, I
student
know, but are
enrollment.
you in that budget? Is that where your allocation?
Correct.
comes
It's-
from?
and our allocations are listed throughout if we're getting an allocation from there, correct?
Okay, so pretty much all your state funding outside of grants
Correct,
come through that.
correct, but
Okay.
we are predominantly grants.
Yeah,
We have to go after it, correct?
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because I saw, and I think, was it on the, yeah, this would have been also, I forget, it was the math, I think. An average of 288 Wayne County teachers are using this.
Correct.
And I'm sitting here thinking, back when I was teaching at Denby, just the faculty at Denby, Finney,
Right.
and maybe Kettering or one other east side public school had more teachers than that, just those 3 schools. And you're trying to do the whole,
Correct.
okay. And also nurses, psychologists, even counselors.
Yes,
I'd hate to see what the ratio is of students to counselors these days, right? But I think counselors are like, here's your 400 kids, go figure it out. Are you able to you're providing support services in terms of instruction and other, are you able to provide through your budget actual bodies to say, here, you need a school nurse, we got one for you?
so what we do is we provide services, so Wayne
Yeah.
Risa now employs 4 nurses, am I correct? 4? Am I 4 correct? Okay, we have 4 nurses, we had 2 at one time, so now we have 4.
Yeah.
And we provide services to districts that do not have their own nurse,
I see.
which is correct. Every school district does not have their own nurse. We also help them fill out the applications for the grant funding for them to open up their own school health clinics.
Mhm.
Some have opened up those, but as you know, needs are great. And so some schools have a health clinic with a couple professionals inside. And then they also may have 1 nurse for the entire district.
Yeah,
So
that's what I
we-
was getting at, right?
Correct. Correct.
You
So
got
we-
3
we-
high schools,
supplement in many
7 middle
ways.
schools,
Correct,
18 elementaries, and you got 1 nurse to cover the whole thing.
correct.
Part of let's walk away from public education the way Americans are feeling these days. When it comes to mental health, have you talked to the Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network at all?
We are partners with them.
Okay, are you able to get some funding through there?
They need funding as well.
Pardon me?
They need funding also.
I'm kind of aware of that, but are they able to provide funding for your programs?
So they provide, because we partner with them, they do provide services to schools. So they have funding that in fact they work inside the schools. So they work directly with our nurses and we partner and they do support schools.
So
They
you
do,
have
but
a
they don't give us
partnership,
funding.
and
Correct.
so when something comes up, you call them.
We are
and they
partners,
go out,
we are
okay.
partners in work. Correct.
That's good. And of course, there's not enough funding there
Correct.
as well. So we're gonna have a millage on the ballot next year?
November 5th, 2024, in a couple weeks,
Yeah,
in 2
yeah.
months. Correct.
I think if I'm keeping track of it, I believe that's 89 days.
That's right. We're
But,
there.
not that I'd be
November 5th.
keeping track of when a November
That's
election is.
exactly what it is.
Yeah, and that will provide how much of your, what'd you say? You're
So that's
working
the
on a
renewal.
300 million budget?
Correct. It's the renewal and it's under, it falls under 2 mil. What's the exact dollars that it captures? It ends up being $360 per student roughly for the 260,000 students.
But it sounds like it only maybe raises a quarter of your budget.
Correct. Oh, correct. And it's a large chunk for our districts, and honestly, districts cannot walk away from it. So
Yeah,
we need it to remain in place. It first started in 2016. It was a renewal in 2020, and then there's a renewal again in 2024, and it is on the ballot for 2024.
Can I just
good.
hop in here for one quick question? You
Sure.
said 3 mils, but it looks like
No,
it's
no, no,
2
it's
mils.
two. No, it's
Oh,
under two.
It's
Under
under,
two.
okay.
It's under
Yeah, it's
two,
actually
yeah.
like 1.96.
Okay, so this is just a renewal.
It's
in
a
November.
renewal.
Okay, and it's a little bit early.
No,
Is it
well, the reality is that we can only go out on even years. And in the event that we did not make it this year, it would allow us to go out again in 2 years. But we can't do that. We must go out and cross the board. We must get over the finish line. It will cover us then until 2034. We would not have to go out again until 2030. So the goal is to clear the deck November 5th to ensure that schools stay whole, and it will keep them whole until 2033, 2034,
Hmm.
that school year.
But then you're stuck with that millage rate for all of that time. While
It's
costs
$8
and
a month.
everything are going up
It's,
and
it's $8 a month.
I
It's
got
not
you.
an
No, no.
increase. It's a
No,
renewal.
no.
I just.
And see,
Take
that,
with me.
that's the shame of it, right? It's like people can afford $10 a month if we bump the millage, you know? But it's the commitment again, and now you have this set of dollars
Correct,
in a world where costs are going up
correct.
and perhaps the availability of grants is either staying steady or maybe going down. So,
It's very true.
so I really appreciate you coming in today, and bringing us up to date, on what's going on out there. This is, people say this in various ways, but this is good works of what you're doing out there. And, for various reasons, what our students have dealt with. By the way, do you know, in Wayne County, what grade level are you reading at when you leave 8th grade? Do we have data on that?
We have data we have the numbers every October. We actually
Yeah.
take the numbers that come out that are no longer embargoed like they are now, and we talk about the Wayne County data. The reality is that we still have a huge push to move students who are in the 8th grade to be reading at 8th grade and or above. Unfortunately, prior to COVID, you had many students that were at least many, not all, but you had too many that were at least 2 grade levels below where they should have been.
Yeah, it's almost shocking. It really is.
Correct.
Uh,
But reading and math are fundamental, and we must continue to push them.
I raised
all
this to
children can
work on
learn.
people's conscience out there. We need educated citizens.
Correct.
Word on the street was when I started Denby in 1990 that our incoming 8th graders on average were reading at 5th grade level,
Correct.
which when I get out my 9th grade science textbook, yeah, it's just gonna stay in the back of whatever uncle is driving them to school car. And, you know, it's just, it is so unfortunate, and this is the future of the country. And we need all minds educated. And the fact that we are so far behind in so many places, and we don't have to go into all the reasons here, that it really is a drag, if we don't have that commitment to our young people and to our public education. It's a drag on the whole nation. So, thank you again for the work you do, and thank you for the presentation today, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Yeah.
Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to tell you, I appreciate the presentation. I really do. And because I realize that we have a lot of problems in front of us to deal with in public education, as well as all levels and types of education. My question is, as far as funding, is there, how many resources do you have as far as grants that are available to you? Do you have someone that's working on those grants all the time,
Yes, we
exclusively
Yeah.
working on grants? And how much of your budget comes from grants, both private as well as public?
Can we pull up the chart? We do have it with us. Hold on, I have Kelly pull it, because I don't want to miss.
I think it's important for me to hear too, that you have somebody that's a specific duty of that person or the task.
Absolutely. Yes, we have a full finance department. We have too many dollars not to have eyes on this, as well as some accountant as well. But we are steeped in the dollars. The reality is that, again, as I said, we go after every dollar that is available for intermediate school districts to apply for intentionally, because we support our constituents. And then we also share with them all of the opportunities that where they can apply, and we help them to actually apply because some districts do not have the manpower to apply. So sometimes we create templates and create, narratives that that help support. They need to fill in then their own data and their own information to then submit and apply for the grants. So we support our constituents in applying for dollars that only a school district could apply for, or only a public school academy, a PSA can apply for. What do you have, Kelly?
So we break it down by both personnel expenditures and operations expenditures. Thank you. And I can.
You want to
provide-
come and use the mic, please?
Oh,
There we
sorry.
go. There
There
we
we
go.
go. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank
So we
you.
break it down by both personnel operating expenditures as well as personnel expenditures, right? And so we have two pie charts that I can share, but you can see all the yellow
I
in
can't
this
see that.
chart. Yeah, we can't see
Give
this.
them the numbers.
So the numbers are about 75% of the revenue that we receive is flowing through. And as far as operating expenditures, it's the same. So we are really a service agency.
And 75% of our dollars come from grants
Yeah.
that actually
Right.
come to us, grant funded, and then we distribute and support constituents with it. So 75% of the budget is grant funded. The line item for intermediate school districts in the school aid budget is very, very small. And that in fact just keeps the operations going. Then, as I said, the enhancement millage is the other dollars, and the grants would include the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the money that comes in for our students with that have unique needs with individual education plans. All of our dollars are grant funded. And then we apply for, we partner with Skillman where necessary, Kresge where necessary. If there's a grant that we can meet and match and be a part of, then we go for those dollars.
How about the private grants that might be out there from, say, Microsoft, whether it's some of the computer companies and
Correct. So we have very minimal dollars that come that way, but we do get some that support our STEM programming. Again, any dollar amount that we can apply for that supports students, we apply, but that is less than $2 million each year.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you.
Yeah, privates are definitely small in number, but our privates will support local districts. So then we help them to select those couple, districts that in fact they have an opportunity, because sometimes they have certain criteria. So we will get in front of those districts, host a meeting, and then help them complete whatever paperwork is necessary for that private donor to support those projects.
I wonder too, are we looking across the spectrum of things that there might be grants, as far as grants for recreation to put equipment in, and then use the money that they were going to use for that for education issues and needs that they have?
Absolutely. So each district, definitely, we actually have grant where if grant comes to me, so it might be the Green Initiative. So I have a young lady, Ava, will send what they're doing in terms of implementing plants, implementing green spaces, implementing gardens at school. She sends it to me and then I send it out to all of the districts and then ensure, and sometimes we have FaceTime, we'll host a meeting so that districts will be able to get all of the specifics, see who in fact qualifies, and then we again come up with a template that gives them the meat and potatoes, and then they just fill in their own individual data to make it their own submission of those grants and dollars.
Great, great. Well, appreciate that additional information.
Absolutely. And if you know of any more, send them to me.
Do you get the majority of the grants funded that you apply for?
Well, I'll say this, we get a large number. I mean, we just applied for a grant with Congresswoman Tlaib, as you all know, with you all for our aviation and aeronautics extension program for out Wayne County. So we lean into every area. I mean, you know, if I'm in the airport and I see Senator Peters, I'm trying to talk to him on the side.
Yeah.
You know, so we get a large number for sure that we apply for. But there are some that unfortunately, because our numbers are so large when we ask, that's their entire, you know, fiscal report. They're like, we can't do this, unfortunately. Sometimes they'll even ask us to bring it back and only submit for 2 districts instead of for 20 districts, you know, or submit for 1 because they can't support 5. And we do that and we understand that.
Okay, very good.
But we definitely juggle.
All right.
Awesome.
So we
Awesome.
appreciate your support.
Well, thank you so much, and we appreciate you all being here today.
Thank you again. Please let us know if you need any additional information. I can also forward a link that shows all of the funds that come through Wayne Risa that are distributed to each of the local school districts. I can share that and you can go and see from Northville to Grosse Pointe to Detroit Public Schools Community District to Flat Rock, Gibraltar. You can see them all. Dearborn, Hamtramck, and I can make sure that I send that to Cecily. Is that her name? I can.
Yes, that's fine.
Yes, okay, I can make sure that I share that and then you'll have that and you can look up and you can see the pie chart for all the districts and all the dollars.
Thank you.
Excuse me, would that also include, say, your grants that come in and your resources of revenue that come in? What portion of that actually goes to the school districts versus the administrative costs?
Absolutely.
That come out of it?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, I will send a link and you can click each one of them.
Okay,
Okay,
all right.
all right.
Thank you all.
Thank you
so
again.
much.
You all have a wonderful day.
Okay. Great. That was great. See, it was worthwhile. Anderson wanted to cancel today. Yeah. But it was worth. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, next item.
F, such other matters as may be properly submitted before the committee.
I don't know of any. Next item.
G, public comments.
Is there anyone online?
No hands raised on Zoom.
Okay. Anyone on the phone? No. Okay. All right, anyone in the audience? Anyone in the audience wishes to make a statement? Hearing none, next item, please.
Adjournment.
Lean,